Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode hosted by the Institute for Greatness, where this channel is created for you to achieve breakthroughs, embrace that roadblock as a checkpoint, be proud of those mistakes as inspirations, and instill you with insights that will help you take concrete action to transform yourself. It's for you to experience that success is a choice that anybody can make. Today, we have a very special guest based in Los Angeles, California. And he's a serial entrepreneur who's built some very interesting businesses, who's gone through ups and downs, including almost taking his own life. So today, he's here to share that with you. Make sure to tune in. Hey, welcome, Will. Thank you so much for your time. So yeah, I mean, you've done so much, and there's a lot I want to also learn from you as well. So to start with our first question, you're a serial entrepreneur, including running your own podcast. You're an organizer of many different events. You're also a coach. What gives you the drive to grind and live with uncertainty repeatedly?
So when I graduated college, my first job was a corporate job at Accenture. And this is during the financial crisis. And I was so proud of that job because it got me so close to what my parents told me what success was, which is basically a career with almost like a six-figure salary, right? But it was during the financial crisis, and a year I didn't know how to work. I had a really hard time figuring it out, like how work works. I was just doing the work. I wasn't building the relationships, and also it just felt very trapping at the time, and it wasn't a good fit for me, and I got laid off. And so exactly the exact date in which I got hired, 1 year later, I got laid off because the HR basically put it in some type of algorithm, and on that day I got laid off right during the financial crisis, and I was very sad. I had put my value onto the brand name of being a consultant, onto having a job, and I lost it. And all my friends were still working. They were also getting paid, and I felt very ashamed that I had lost my job. And my dad told me something, and my dad told me that you are incredibly lucky that you experienced failure so early in your life, so you can experience what it is, so that you aren't scared of it. And when that happened, I definitely felt the full experience of failure, but I got through it. And ever since then, like, I've never been afraid again, because I knew that at the other side of it was actually not that bad. I also understood that in order for me to actually live a fuller life, I needed to have complete control over my life and choose what I wanted to work on. And I couldn't get myself back into a situation where I was just a cog, being told what to do. And my last 20 years has been really a pursuit of building skills in order to become free, and to allow myself to do the things I like to do in a way that I can do them, because I can't just sit at a desk and just be told what to do for 8 hours for 40 hours a week. I need to be able to have more control over my life. And with, like, from a business perspective, I realized very, very early on that a business is just a vehicle for creation, right? It's a vehicle for sustainable creation. And so if I could create a business, then I could create, and I could continue creating. And so that's kind of my pursuit for the last 20 years has been just creation in a sustainable way.
Great. Wow, that's a great story to share. That's the first question here, because it also resonates a lot with me getting laid off, which we talked about how I got laid off, and that's how I started my journey as well. Because, as you said, it's actually not as daunting as you think it is. Once you take that plunge, just like, yeah, so what? Not a big deal, right? And then this whole emphasis on freedom, which is great. So I want to ask you, actually, next question is, how does what you do then for the last 20 years align with your values and purpose? What are they?
When I was at Accenture, I mean, a lot of it was probably because I was so young. I just didn't really understand how the world worked or things. But there was a lot of resentment, and a lot of the resentment came from, like, feeling like I wasn't actually. They would because it's such a big corporation. It's like they tell you something and you buy the Kool-Aid, but really like it's just a job and just a corporation, right? And I experienced kind of like almost like getting stabbed in the back, but it was probably all my fault. But I experienced that feeling at a young age, and I was like, um, I and then I felt like very disillusioned about work and about people, and I was like, if I'm going to live the rest of my life, I'm going to have to start creating my own worlds and be able to create my own values and inject in it, right? And so, I mean, when early on in the first maybe 10 years of working, I try to find places that I optimized for places that were with friends, right? So my second job, my college friend hired me and I worked for him. And then, I went to Asia. I joined a team of co-founders who were my friends. I went to San Francisco and I basically worked under a friend. And so I basically try to create that like relationships first before joining the company. And then when I started my own company, I really wanted to make sure that I built a world in which everyone felt cared for and everyone felt protected. And I feel like for me, business is a way for me to create that world, right? As long as your business is making money, then you can basically treat your employees the way that like you wanted to be treated when you were young. And so that's kind of like I feel yeah. So I mean I've been doing my company for the last 10 years, and everyone no one has really, ever really left. Everyone that we hired has stayed. A lot of it is just because we really take care of our employees, and we just want to create an environment in which I would have wanted to work at when I was younger.
Okay, great. So it sounds like the value
Yeah.
that you treasure is definitely freedom and your ability to really impact others in a way that they can feel respected and they want to be treated the way that they deserve to be treated, and how you said you want to be treated when you were growing up.
Yeah, I think that yeah. So personally, my value is freedom. Yes, but in order for me to get my freedom, I need to treat everyone like how I wanted to be treated, so they have a place for them. But personally, I want freedom, right? I want to be able to. So I'm in Austin this week, right? And I'm doing things that are for me, and I want to be able to travel. And I want to be able to do things. And if I had just like a job where I had to basically show up for someone, it'd be harder for me to do the things that I'm enjoying doing today.
Okay.
I get complete freedom.
Right.
Yeah. And then also freedom from a work perspective. So as your company becomes more sustainable and successful, you get to give the things that drain you of energy to people that actually enjoy doing those things. And you only have to do the things that you really love doing or that gives you energy or you're
Right.
really good
Right.
at. And so I really like the flexibility around that as well. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for elaborating a bit more on that. So now just to talk about your company, which you alluded to earlier, is I want to ask about Parting Pro, which is Shopify for funeral homes. How did you come up with this idea? I think it's more than a decade ago, right?
Yeah, it was 10 years ago. So we actually started off with a different business model. So I'll just tell you really quickly, Parting Pro is a vertical SaaS company. So basically software as a service. I'll get into that in a little bit later. But for the first 2 years, it wasn't that business. For the first 2 years, it was parting.com. Parting.com is a marketplace, sort of like a hotels.com for funeral homes. And we originally started the business because my co-founder Tyler, who's a CEO, is like had a family member pass away, and he realized how old and archaic, broken the industry was. And at the time, the biggest problem in the industry was price transparency. So you couldn't actually figure out what the pricing was for any funeral home. They didn't have any pricing on their websites. A lot of them didn't even have websites. And if you were to call them and ask them for the pricing, unless you asked it in a very specific way for legal reasons, they wouldn't tell you. And so you would actually have to come into the funeral home and they would upsell you, right? And so it was just a really poor experience. And so we were like, okay, this price transparency issue in the industry is an industry-wide problem. We actually probably could do something about it. So what we ended up doing, there's actually a legal requirement because the industry in general is there's a lot of legal things in the industry to make it a little bit more less shady. And so one of these rules was like a pricing rule in which you have to use the exact words general price list, and they have to give you a general price list of all the pricing, right? But most customers don't know that, and so when they ask for pricing, they didn't get anything unless they go inside. So we use this like legal thing, asking for the general price list, and we hired a bunch of Filipinos that could speak English to cold call funeral homes, and then a bunch of Indians to email funeral homes and asking for the general price list. And we got all the pricing across the United States, like 20 to 30,000 funeral homes of all the pricing. And then we just put that online as a marketplace. And so because like we had all the pricing, we got a ton of traffic. So we were like getting like 30,000 visitors a month, looking for pricing for funeral homes. And you would just search your zip code and you would find all the funeral homes in that area. And that's how we got our traffic, right? So that's kind of how it started. But so just maybe for the audience to get like an idea of, that's an investment, right? So at that point, we had already known that this was going to work, or not going to work, but this was something that was valuable. But before we did that, I can explain some steps so that it might kind of increase the creative juices. So in the beginning, right, there was a couple problems within the industry. We didn't know which one was going to be the hit, right? We got the price transparency because what we did was we just made a fake website using like Instapage or like a Lead Pages Now or whatever. It's like a drag and drop website. And we just had like an email thing, and then we just had like the different problems that we had. I don't remember the problems exactly. I only know price transparency because that's the one we ended up winning. But we had a bunch of different potential problems of the industry. And so like, it's like, do you want to know pricing, right? And so we bought Google Ads on pricing and all these other problems. And we went to a fake website with pricing and all these other problems. And we figured out, okay, which one is the actual problem that customers were looking for. And it was pricing. And then once we got the pricing thing, okay, let's make a fake website that has a bunch of listings of funeral homes, right? And so let's say we start in Dallas, Texas, right? And so we just looked on Google Maps, found 5 funeral homes on Google Maps, and then made fake websites with reviews and information on these. So imagine a listing page with 5 funeral homes with like photos and names and addresses and stuff like that, right? This is a drag and drop website that we made, and then you click on it, and then there's 5 drag and drop websites behind each of those links of each funeral home and information and their pricing and their phone number, right? And so with each of these 5 funeral homes, we put a fake phone number that went through to the funeral home that recorded the funeral home call, right? This is probably illegal, but that's what we did. And so then we were like, okay, can we actually get people to click on a Google ad, to go to the Dallas listing page, go to the funeral home page, and actually call the funeral home to basically get become a customer, right? And so we paid for that, and then yes, we could. All right, so now these 5 funeral homes, can we actually talk to these 5 funeral homes and ask these 5 funeral homes, hey, like if we got you a customer, can you give us 20% of the right? And so we work with these 5 funeral homes, and they're like, okay, yes. And then we just started actually getting customers to each of these funeral homes, and we started telling these funeral homes, hey, like this customer actually is through us, and they started paying a percentage fee, affiliate fee, basically for that thing, right? And then we're like, okay, this works. So now that this works, now we can make money. Now this model works. Now let's go get traffic, like real traffic. And then that's why we invested in getting all the pricing, right? And then actually building a website where you can actually search and you can actually find funeral homes and you can actually get all of their pricing.
Okay.
And so yeah. And so then basically we built a website of that. And then because this was such a hot topic, this pricing transparency issue, we ended up getting on like New York Times, and we got television and a bunch of like NPR, right, all around this pricing problem. And yeah, we got so popular, like funeral homes try to sue us because like it was like it was really crazy. Like at the time, it was so insane. Like we were just getting so much traffic, and yeah, so that's how we started. Okay, so what happened? Yes, we were getting tons of traffic. People were coming to our website, and they were calling these funeral homes, right? But it wasn't a good business. And the reason why it wasn't a good business were two reasons, or multiple reasons. One is that it's a very local
Mm,
business, right? Meaning that like only so these funeral homes are only like mom and pops, right? And so like if you work out a deal with one funeral home in one city, that's
mm,
it, right? And so like let's say you wanted to actually work out deals within like Los
mm,
Angeles, right? You can't control all the funeral homes in Los Angeles. So there's 30 or 40 of them, right? You have to work out a deal with every single one of these funeral homes, which is not going to actually happen. And you can't control which funeral home each one
mm.
chooses, right? And then it's local, so you have to do this for every
Yep.
single city. You have to basically work out deals for every single city, and then it's only happens one time in these
Mm,
customers' lives.
mm,
Someone dies. So even if you get them to come to your website and it works, they're never going to
mm,
come back. It's not a
mm,
repeat customer, right? And then what made it even worse was that these funeral homes are so bad at
mm,
selling. So like we would actually give these leads to these funeral homes. These funeral homes pick up the phone and say, "Hey, what do you want?" And they would say, "What is the pricing of this thing?" And they're like, "Da da da," and then they would just
okay.
hang up, right? And so like even if we got the traffic to that city and that person actually went to the funeral home that we are working with, and then the funeral home actually got the call, the funeral home would not
Mm,
actually sell
okay.
it, right? And so then we were like, okay, we're not going to make any money. So
Mm,
that's 2 years in, and we just realized it's not a good business. And what we realized from a business perspective was we were focusing on the wrong customer. And the customer is actually should not be the
mm,
consumer. The customer actually needs to be the funeral home, because the funeral home is the one that with the repeat problem,
mm, mm.
right? And then the funeral home is the one with the
Yep.
money, right? And so if you think about the marketplace, the reason why like hotels.com works is because all the hotels have a software backend where you can just book from hotels.com to their software backend, right? But these funeral homes had no software. So basically party.com would not be able to book anything on like any software on these funeral home software because we don't have any software.
Mm,
And so we were like, okay, we need to build out the supply first. Even for we still have Point.com, and the dream is still to eventually build out this marketplace. But first, we have to build out the supply and become the software for the funeral homes
mm.
first, right? As like just a SaaS software where they can just run their businesses, and eventually we might be able to then plug Point.com back into these funeral homes now that they have
Got
software.
it. Okay. Oh, thanks for being very clear on that. So yeah, this pivot
Yeah,
2 years into your journey was crucial, it sounds like. But it's also because
yeah,
you had to
yeah,
try to learn the marketplace because neither of you
yeah.
guys had any experience in this, right? At least in the funeral home industry.
Yeah. We didn't really know what we were doing, so we were just trying different things. We didn't really know having relationships within the industry. We're just figuring stuff out. In the very beginning, everyone
Yeah.
hated us. And then so then party.com didn't work, right? And we're like, okay, now we want to build software for funeral homes. And a lot of these old school traditional funeral homes, like they don't need software, right? They're already running the things that they were already running. Um, and so why would they want to
Mm,
buy us, right? And so we had to think about it. And so we looked at a very small segment of the market, which was
okay.
cremations. And cremations at that time when we first started were much lower rate. There was maybe like 30 or 40% cremations versus
Mm,
burials, right? Burials are maybe $10,000. Cremations are maybe $1,000, right? But we started seeing that cremations were
okay.
rising, right? So, and we started seeing these innovators in the market that were going cremation
Mm,
only. They were basically because like there was definitely a behavior change in the market in which like people that were more educated, that were moving around a lot more, didn't have a place to bury. So they started more opting for the $1,000 cremation than $10,000 burial, right? The problem with the $1,000 cremation is funeral homes don't make any money off of those, right? You can make a lot of money by being very slow and by being very high touch and service oriented with a $10,000 burial. But with a $1,000 cremation, you can't spend any time on these customers. And so they didn't want to do it. But there's these very small, specific new innovators that were starting to show up where they were doing cremation only. And in order to make money, they needed to be highly volume based, right? Highly volume based means low touch. Low touch means software. And so we started only going after this small segment of the market, which were direct cremation only funeral homes that needed software. And what we did for them is we basically helped them convert their leads into customers. And the way we did that was they would collect an email from the family, and then with one click of a button, you would email an email to the family with the link, and the link would do like a Shopify experience where what kind of service do you want? What kind of urn do you want? What kind of casket do you want? What kind of service, like all that stuff like that. And then you buy it and pay for it at the end, right? So that's the beginning. That's the first product. That's all we built for direct cremation only customers, right? And so that was 8 years ago. And once we got direct cremation customers, that lead conversion thing, that was a complete innovation. No one has ever before us 10 years ago, nobody put prices online. Now industry standards, everyone has prices. 8 years ago, before we started, nobody sold any of their services online. Now it's kind of standard practice, and that's because of us too, right? And so we started with this direct cremation, and we allowed them to sell their services online. And then once they became a customer, there's all these other things that they have to do. So there's a lot of legal things that have to happen. If you're going to cremate a body, you have to make sure that everyone agrees to it. So there's a lot of forms that you sign, right? In the industry, before we got into it, all of it was fax machine. And if you didn't have a fax machine, they would email you a PDF. You would print it out, sign it, and then you have to have a fax machine to fax it back, right? And so we introduced e-signature into the industry.
Okay.
Then you have the lead conversion Shopify experience. Then once they become a customer, you have the DocuSign or e-signatures experience. And then we continually adding on more services, whether it's invoicing and like keeping track of information and all this stuff like that, right? And then so we became the full management software for these direct cremation companies. And all this at the same time, this thing was trending. So now I think we're maybe at 60% cremations now from 40%. And especially after COVID, right? Everything changed. And so because if you can just imagine, before COVID, only these direct cremation companies really understood the internet, but nobody else did, and they didn't want to hear it. But then 5 years into building the business, COVID happened, and then nobody could go to the funeral homes anymore, right? And everyone wanted cremations, and it was all high volume. And then so basically, we became a nice to have to a must have.
I see. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then because cremations are rising and we're seeing more and more cremations, we're getting more and more relevant, right? And so we could only get like the first adopters to actually buy software, but now the stuff that we're doing has become industry standard, and now now everyone is open to having our software. We still can't get truly traditional funeral homes to buy our software because they're still very high touch, but anywhere in between, right? Anywhere in between, we are able to, right? Because people are willing to spend $1,000 online, but through shopping online, but people are not willing to spend $10,000, right? So we're not there yet in the industry. So we're not serving the very traditional $10,000 really nice funeral homes, but we are basically serving the mom and pops and the cremations and then services and stuff like that. And so, yeah, so that's where the business is right now. The industry it's very hard to get into the industry, right? Because it's a family industry in which the the funeral homes are passed down generation to generation. So a lot of these funeral directors are like fourth generation funeral directors, right? And so most of these software companies or legacy software that were started by a funeral director like 30 years ago, whatever like that, right? And so when we first came on, we were like two Asian guys like that would show up to these funeral conferences, and like we didn't look like any of them. Basically, we weren't them. But then over time, as we started just showing up and continue showing up and adding value and building trust, now we're like one of the top softwares, and everyone knows who we are. Yeah.
These are the inspiring stories, right? Because you talk about how you and your partner didn't have prior experience. It was just an idea. You jumped in, you learned, you had to pivot, and then you disrupted the industry in many ways, right? You were the pioneers in a lot of current market standards. And people always wonder, where does standards come in? Well, it's because somebody had to disrupt and introduce it. So it's great to hear it from you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to take a step back and just understand a bit of the earlier stages, right? How, number one is, how did you decide to choose your partner? How did your partner choose you? Because a lot of people, who listen to this too, sometimes they feel like, I'm listening to this podcast because I want to start a business, and just because I have a friend, let's just partner with a friend, right? Like, is it as easy as that? What's the thought process? How did you go through fundraising? Because again, a lot of people maybe coming out as an employee, they've never done a lot of these things, right? It's very daunting to them. So yeah, how did you learn all these things?
So I'll start with the co-founder question first, and then we can go into fundraising. My co-founder is Tyler. So I have two co-founders. One is my brother, who came in 2 years afterwards when we started Parting Pro. We brought in. So, but then when we first started, it was just me and Tyler. He was my college roommate in college. He was in my fraternity in college. We were working on, we were both leadership in college, so we kind of worked together. And then he was the one that hired me when I lost my job. And so I worked for him for 2 years, right? And then so basically, then I went off to Asia. I went to Silicon Valley. I saw a bunch of things, and then Tyler basically was like, when in 2015, Tyler was like, "Hey, I have this idea. Do you want to come back and work on it with me?" Right? And I think the reason why it's worked is because we've worked together, right? It's not that we were just friends, but we've also worked together. And being friends is different from working together. And it's important to actually have work together to have an idea of how you guys work. Because what you're doing is you're getting to marriage. And even though me and Tyler really trust each other and we work really well together, and it's still, after 10 years, like, it's really hard to actually like have like a friend relationship. It's like we're good, right? But then like we see each other every day, and it's just hard, right? And so so I would just say that's how we found it, and it's a marriage, and it's really important to when you build a co-founder relationship, it's really important to work together first and really have an idea of what you're trying to build, alignment and values, and what you're good at, and whether or not you basically kind of like cover each other, right? And you guys value what the other person provides. That's really important too. And then also making sure that before you start, you have a protection with each other, right? And so one of those things is vesting. So making sure that 4 years, I think 4 years is too short, to be honest. I feel like you should be even longer, to be honest. But some type of vesting where you're vesting for 6 years or something like that. So when a disagreement happens and when you guys don't want to work together anymore, the company still can exist because there's no dead equity in it.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's really important. Yeah. Because it's bound to happen. A lot of these things are bound to happen. And so just make sure that you're prepared for what might happen. Yeah. It's like doing a pre-up, basically. Right. So that's the runner question. The fundraising question. So the fundraising question is an interesting one because I actually started out as a CEO.
Okay.
And then Tyler, because I had gone to Asia, I had gone to Silicon Valley, I knew how it all worked. And so I was a CEO, and I raised money. So when we first I remember this. So we first raised maybe 50K from Tyler's friend. We started with that. We ran out of that money pretty quickly, and then the first time I fundraised, I still remember my biggest check was 250K, and At that time, it was just friends and family. And so I remember my business school friend, John, who was this white American Texan who was like the quarterback of his, like, you ever seen Friday Night Lights? And the quarterback, he was like that quarterback for Friday Night Lights, right? He went to Beijing with me, and that's like, we were two Americans, and that's how we became friends. And after Beijing, he ended up working for this private equity guy. And so John told me, hey, I heard you're raising the money, and my boss is going to be at the TED Talks. And do you want to meet him and do you want to pitch him? Right. And I was like, yes, I want to pitch him. And he's like, okay, well, let me talk to him. And he's like, okay, I worked out this thing where he needs a ride from the TED Talks to his hotel. It's a 15-minute drive. If you can give him a ride, he'll be willing to take a pitch. Right. And so I drive 2 hours to give him a 15-minute ride. And I show up an hour ahead of time. And I basically practice that route 3 times and practice the pitch 3 times while I'm on that route, just so that I can say it and drive at the same time. And so I pick him up, and he's a really cool guy. And I'm pitching, and like, it's like I'm connecting. He's been to China. He really understands China. He's this white guy, Tom Darden, from North Carolina. And midway through, he was like, hey, do you want to go to Starbucks? And then we go to Starbucks, and then we spend like 3 hours together. And then after 3 hours, and then we stopped talking about like the company. We started talking about our lives and stuff like that. And after that, he's like, okay, I'll give you $250. Wow. And then like maybe whatever's in our bank account. And that was like because at that time we ran out of money. We only had $50K and we ran out of money. And so that was like a lifesaver. So that was a big moment for us. And then I had heard of Y Combinator, and I was like, Tyler, we have to get out of LA. We have to go to San Francisco. Tyler had no idea what like San Francisco was like. And I was like, we need to be around other founders. We need to be in San Francisco. Let's go. I just want to apply to these accelerators, and we need to be around founders and people that know what they're doing to teach us stuff. And so we applied to a bunch of them, and we got into 500 startups. And we got into this other one called NFX. And so we did both of them basically. And during that process, we learned a ton of different things. We learned a bunch of different distribution stuff from 500 startups. So how to market. They were really good at marketing. And then NFX basically was the one that told us to change our business model, because they've seen so many of these marketplaces and they've seen so many of these SaaS software. So they knew the dynamics, and they're the ones that's like, hey, you guys, you have to stop working on the marketplace, work on the SaaS supply side. And so they basically helped us pivot. And then as we're going through this process, we start really learning how to pitch VCs and really learning how to like, tell these stories and stuff like that. But I started realizing at the time, like, I'm not the right fit for this. I can't actually remember numbers. I'm not the right person to raise money. And then I'm like, okay, Tyler, can you do it? And Tyler didn't want to do it, but Tyler could do it better than I could. So he actually was the one that actually pitched our demo day, and he raised a little bit of money. That's how we survived again. And then there's these moments, each moment of almost dying, and then finding a way to raise more money, and then finally got to a point like maybe like 2 years ago. So we're like, we never have to raise money again. And so we never actually have to raise that much money. Because we were so bad at raising money, it was actually a blessing in disguise. I think we only raised $2 million, but because we only raised $2 million, we were forced to like have a real business. And when like COVID hit, and then when nobody could raise money anymore after COVID, right? So there was like, everyone could raise money and nobody could raise money. And then all my friends were like, had raised all this crazy money, and we're living the good life, and had these upside down companies, and we basically couldn't raise any money. We couldn't afford to have an office, so we were remote first only. And we were looking for a way. We couldn't hire anyone out of California, so we had to go to like Middle America and hire these army wives that like to basically be like kind of our face. And then we hired Ukrainians to be our engineers. We hired Filipinos to be our customer service. And then I was really ashamed. I was so ashamed because like everyone else had nice offices and they were killing it and whatever like that. And then COVID hit, and then everyone was remote. And I was like, oh, like we already know how to do this. This is something that we already know how to do, right? And then we just had a real business, and we didn't have to worry about making money. And yeah, it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I mean, it's great you highlight this point because a lot of these startups they actually shut down because of indigestion, in a sense that they get too much capital.
Yeah,
They hire all these people
yeah,
because the VC is going to ask them deploy the capital. Otherwise, why did you raise it,
yeah,
right? And then, as you said, they never think about having a sustainable business model. So, in many ways, right? If you look at it, as
yeah,
you said, look at life from a different perspective. Your weakness, in a sense,
yeah,
from fundraising, actually turned out to be a forte for your business.
yeah. Yeah, because also it's given us freedom too, right? Because we didn't have to raise an
Mm,
equity round. We don't have a board of directors. We don't have anyone on our board, so we can just do whatever we want, and we can take us slowly. So we want. We can enjoy our lives as we're growing this business. Like we're not forced to really grow super
right.
fast, and so that's been a blessing in
That
disguise
is a
as well.
dream life for entrepreneurs,
Yeah,
to be honest. As you said, nobody
yeah,
pressuring you every month. Some guys calling because I gave you capital, and then
yeah,
your story about
yeah,
practicing the route and practicing the pitch. I mean, it's one of those things like you feel you've never done before, but if you reflect back, it's a conversation really, which you have conversations with many people, except you just never rehearsed it
yeah.
enough times. A lot of it had a hop. So
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like I was so shy and I was so nervous and I was like I was so not confident in myself, right? But these last 10 years have basically forced me to do things that I had to do, or else like everyone that I promised things would basically not, like I would just fail
right.
them. And so I was forced to do this. And now like coming out of it, I'm very confident I could talk, I could pitch, and I could say like right, and it's all because I was forced to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that power of sticking to your purpose, right? Every day working towards striving to fulfill that purpose just naturally makes you more hungry, right? Makes you overcome these
yeah,
obstacles. So I want to ask
yeah,
a little bit more about your journey as a business leader, right? Because like all these things that you talk about now, of course, it's easy to say in hindsight. But when you first started, you had no experience. You were an employee. You didn't know what it meant to be a CEO, right? So I just give you a title, you're C-suite. You're like, okay, sure, but what does that really mean, right? And I think so. A lot of the people
yeah,
listening to this, they kind of fall in that camp as well. Some of these are aspiring or could be young entrepreneurs or founders, so they don't really know what it means to be
yeah,
a leader, except they're just given this title, right? So, what would you say was the
yeah.
most challenging thing, and what kind of brought you out of your cocoon besides kind of just practice and being thrown into the fire?
I mean, it's hard because I mean, especially in the beginning, it's hard because you're sacrificing your own salary to pay
Mm,
others, right? And so, and it's like everyone doesn't really know how hard it, like how and what kind of position the company's actually in, right? Because you want to basically make sure that all your employees feel comfortable and feel safe and like feel like there's like a long-term future in working here, but like you don't know if you're going to make
mm,
payroll
mm,
every month, right? And it's like and you're like there's like I think like in the very beginning we didn't pay ourselves for like a couple years, and then we paid ourselves minimum wage for like 4 or 5 years, and then we paid ourselves like 100 grand like very recently, like 3 4 years
mm,
ago, and like it's or something like that, right? It's like something crazy in which like my employees for sure at like from an equity perspective, like yeah, it's great, but from like a salary perspective and actually cash flow perspective, I think all my employees probably a lot of my employees that make wait like 10 times more money than I have over the amount of years,
right.
right? And they don't know this, right? Most of them don't know this because we just want to make sure that they feel like they're in like a safe place, and it took us a lot. It took us a while to get to a cash flow position where it's really comfortable now. But I would say that's one. I think also, I mean, we didn't really know what we were doing, so there was like a lot of failures, right?
Mm,
We when we first started, even though I'm computer science and an engineer, I had basically I had brought my co-found so we had four co-founders at a certain point. I had a CTO, a college friend of mine. I recruited him and he joined us for 3 years. But like we weren't making any
mm,
money, and he's an engineer and he could easily get paid two
mm,
grand anywhere he wanted to go. And after a couple of years, he's like, dude, what are we doing here? Like, you pay me more. And we're like, we can't pay you more right now. We don't have any money. And then so he ended up leaving and going to Stripe and getting paid like, a lot of money. And then after he left, it's like I didn't have any technical person anymore. And so I would just hire somebody. And then we ended up hiring an outsourced dev shop for a while we were trying to figure out how it all work. And then basically for that outsourced dev shop put us in a ton of technical debt. So we ended up basically probably like losing 2 years of development because we built it wrong, and we had to rebuild it again. So we lost like 2 or 3 years. We're still today pieces of our software still cannot be touched because of that time, right? And so there's a lot of that stuff that happened, and then so the technical debt stuff is probably the most expensive, but also in other parts of the department too, like we're just learning, right? So how do you build the departments? You do it yourself first really badly, right? So how do you build customer service? You're just a customer service person. You just do it really badly, and you just figure it out. And then, okay, I know what needs to be a customer service person, and then you bring someone in that's better than you. Or implementation, you do it yourself first, and you're just really bad at it, right? Like, or what we've done every single role, and then we're just really bad at it, and then we fuck things up, and then the system's all really bad, and then once we figure out, okay, this is kind of working, then we find someone to actually help us clean it up,
okay,
right? And we get better at it. And so there's a lot of that stuff going on from an actual leadership perspective. I think we actually are pretty good leaders, like human leaders, and we know how to motivate. We know which each person needs to be motivated, and we give them that. We're like we give everyone a lot. Like, yeah, I can kind of go through to how do you build an environment to or the systems in place to really get the most out of your team. But yeah,
I know we can go into that too. But just to summarize a little bit of what you said, right, which is it sounds like for you to grow to become that leader, part of the journey is you have to go through adversity, right? It's the discomfort that allows you to learn and grow. And then it's about having a...
So one of the things as a founder, one thing is as a founder, you have to do the job first, because no one's going to figure it out for you. You have to basically figure it out first, write the playbook, and give it to somebody else. You can't just basically be like, hey, this problem here, I'm just going to hire someone to fix the problem. It doesn't work like that. It's you actually have to go in there and then fix it first and figure out how it all works, and then hire somebody that's better than you to take your place.
Okay, that's a very good point. So as you said, you got to kind of F things up. You just got to test things and do as much as possible and F things up, right? And then that's when you really learn to grow.
You have to sell. You have to be the person. You have to be the first salesperson. You have to figure out who your customers are. You have to basically like sell enough so you know the script and what's valuable and with that. And once you kind of figure it out, then you can give it to someone else. But you can't hire a salesperson to sell for you first, because they're not going to be able to figure it out.
Right. Great. And then the point would be you have a purpose that is bigger. That's not focused on yourself, which is, as you said, the key was to make sure you pay the staff over yourself. And that greater purpose is what's going to override any obstacle that you're facing. Okay. No, so thank you for that. Okay. Maybe a few points of what you said about building this culture where you guys are great leaders with people. Because as you mentioned earlier, you said almost no staff or very few staff leave the company. So that's a huge positive sign, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, so one of the books that we love is Traction. Okay. And it's based on EOS. And there's a lot of principles in it, and I'll explain a couple. So the first one is the right people in the right seats, right? And so you want to make sure that each person that you put into a position, one, is capable of doing the job, and then like actually is really capable of doing the job, right? Not you think like has potential, but actually is really capable. And then two is actually the willingness to do the job, right? That's really important. A lot of times we have people that we feel iffy about, that we putting in positions. We want to basically just let go of those people or put them in the right positions, because otherwise it'll be really hard. So right people in the right seats. Two is that you want to create a sense of like what your values are, right? And so the way to do that is look at your best employees and what do you like about them, and then create values based on that. and then make sure you're reaffirming those values continuously. So we have an all hands every 3 weeks, and every 3 weeks we talk about, hey, we are here to transform the funeral industry, basically making families experience better, funeral homes and families experience. So we're reminding them, hey, like this is the bigger picture of what you're contributing. Your day-to-day stuff might be boring, but you're actually contributing to this bigger vision, right? And then two is that our values, right, are like personally accountable, growth oriented. I'll have to look up what the actual values I forgot, but basically we list them. We list every single thing. And then we also have a channel called Big Ups, where each employee or team member will actually anytime they have a good experience with another team, they'll basically give them like a big up, say, hey, they did this because, and then this shows this value.
Okay.
So it reinforces, okay, this is in order for you to do well here, these are the things, these are the attributes that you must show.
Okay.
And then another thing that we do is that we give an understanding of where we're going. So we have like a 10-year plan of like, okay, here is where we're going. And then what does it look like 5 years? What does it look like 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year? And then this is what we want to accomplish in 1 year. And so based on that, what do we need to accomplish in this quarter in order to make that work, right? Everyone on our team will basically come up with their own, right? And then every week we basically meet one-on-one to make sure that everyone is on track to that quarterly goal. So now that everyone knows exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how their work will actually get us to the big vision.
Got it.
So that we don't actually have to tell them what to do anymore. Everyone's alive. We just have to say, hey, how can I unblock you, or how can I help you get your right? So we're not actually telling anyone anything.
Okay. Yeah, I think what you said about the whole values aspect, both forming it at the personal level and then at the corporate level, is so important, right? Because honestly, most people, we don't think about these things. Like, oh, we do what we do because we're programmed to do it or we're expected to do this. But how does this align with your values, right? Yeah. And then once you put that in place, it just becomes automatic, because then it helps you. All this trickles through the organization. And then people don't naturally feel, oh, there's a GPS now. I know where I'm going because I just follow these values. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I just want to actually digress a little bit then, which is not on the company, but now about how on your LinkedIn, you write, helping Asian American create a life they love. If you could elaborate a bit more, kind of how did you come up with that? And what are you trying to do exactly?
Yeah. So when I was 33, I think 3 years into my company, I hit a wall, and basically what was happening at the time was I was in a 10-year relationship that I had met in college, and 8 of those years were long distance. So for 8 years we only saw each other 3 times a year, and so so I was in LA, she was in Hong Kong. Then I went to Beijing, and then I went to San Francisco, and then she went to Sydney, Australia. Then I went to Los Angeles, and then she had just gotten promoted to go to Geneva, Switzerland. And my company was not successful. We were not making any money. I had taken money from her dad as an investor. I had recruited my brother and my other friend to join us in this company. And my company was not successful enough or making enough money where I can ask my girlfriend at the time to join me. And I couldn't do long distance anymore. And it was just a lot of pressure. And I didn't talk to anyone about it. No one really knew what the burden that I was carrying. And I didn't know how to handle it. And I had put all these stories on my back and all this responsibility on my back. And just one night, I just started walking, and I just was so full of anxiety because I didn't know what to do. And I basically was like, okay, I just need to end this anxiety. And so I stepped out from the sidewalk. It's like 9 p.m. at night. I stepped out on the sidewalk onto the road, and there's like this oncoming car. The bright lights were coming. And then all of a sudden, like as the bright lights shine on me, I was like, oh, my parents are going to be sad. And I stepped back on the sidewalk, and I was like, oh shit, what the fuck just happened? That was really weird. And the next day, I told my co-founders, like, because at the time we had gotten a place in Los Angeles. It was like a Tyler's aunt had this house where there's 4 bedrooms, and we were all working out of there like a hacker house. And I told everyone, hey, like this is what happened, and they were like, okay, you go take a break. And so I ended up going to a psychiatrist, and I actually don't know if I'm actually bipolar, but I got diagnosed as bipolar because I knew all the symptoms and I told him the symptoms, and I got diagnosed with bipolar. And then I started basically then realizing that I was really like not good. And so I started just telling my friends about my situation. And as I started sharing, I started realizing, oh shit, like feels better, right? This being sharing feels like, okay, like it's not that bad. And actually, these are just stories in my head. And as I'm sharing like what's going on with me, my friends are feeling connected to me, and they're sharing. I've given them permission to share what's going on with them now. And then so I'm sharing, and they're sharing, and I'm making these connections now, and I'm starting to realize, oh, okay, like this is what you're supposed to be doing. And then I started going to therapy, and COVID hit. So before COVID, so I started going to therapy to process some of this stuff. And I thought I had processed a lot of this stuff out. I realized that my mother was a tiger mom, and love was achievement, right? And the reason why I was with my ex for 10 years was because I was chasing her, and I was trying to show my love through achievement and trying to build this company so that I can love her, and sacrificing my own needs and desires of wanting to be together for this relationship. And the reason why it lasted this long was because it was so familiar. And going to therapy made me realize that what I needed to do was actually just love myself, right? I needed to accept myself, love myself. I was even after we stopped dating, like I was still, when I started dating again, I kept finding people like my ex, which was like, my therapist was like, why do you always choose if you were to choose like a finance person versus a pediatrician, or I think she used plastic surgeon versus pediatrician, you'd always choose a plastic surgeon, right? You're always choosing these type of personality types. Why aren't you looking for more nurturing types? And I was like, nurturing types are boring. Like, why would I ever want a nurturing type? Like, it just kind of disgusted me, even the thought of that, right? And she's like, yeah, why don't you choose like a dentist or something like that? I was like, that felt so boring to me. And I realized why it felt boring is because like I was attracted to emotional volatility. And when something felt safe, the emotional volatility wasn't there, and that I thought that was that. I thought there was no attraction there. And so, so then COVID hit. I started dating my wife, and she was a dentist, and then trying to kind of build the muscle of actually dating somebody by building up love instead of being pushed and pulled through emotional volatility was like the work that I was doing, right? And then I found someone to actually nurture me and to accept me for all of me and love me. And yeah, so me and my wife are married now. But so that was a process, right? But I still didn't figure out another piece of it, which was there was a stuckness in my work. So like COVID happened and all this like that. So everything was great, right? But I'm 7 years into the business, but I still feel trapped. And the whole reason why I started a company in the first place was not to feel trapped. And I was more trapped than anybody else, right? And I was so trapped. And okay, my relationship thing started working again. I was no longer trapped in my relationship. I figured that part out. But my work was so trapping. And so I started realizing, like, I got coached. I found a coach, and I started realizing that there was a different way, right? And I'm gonna explain it to you how I understand it. And so there's 4 stages of development: to me, by me, through me, as me. To me is the first stage, which is like victim mentality. We know a lot of these people. I have no control over the world, but I'm going to complain about it, right? Things are happening to me. It's like being on a raft in the ocean and just getting tossed around and being very resentful of it. Most of us are in by me. By me is when you start realizing the world is your oyster and you can control things and you can navigate the world to get what you want, right? So it's like being in a rowboat and just rowing in the direction that seeing land, and I want that land that will make me feel good, and I'm just going to row, right? And it doesn't matter what the waves are like, or the ocean is like, or the wind is like, or the rain is like. You're just going to keep your head down and row. You're just going to row as hard as you can. And then over time, it gets really, really tiring, right? in the beginning, it's like super freeing. It's like, oh, I have so much agency in the world. But by your mid-30s, it's like every failure is like devastating, because that means that you're not good enough. And you wake up one day and you look up and you realize, like, what the fuck am I? I'm so miserable, right? And that's by me, right? It's going
Yep.
in, right? And what I realized and what I learned through my coach was that there's a next phase, which is through me. And what through me is actually like looking up and turning on our compass, our internal navigation system, and having a general direction of where you should be going, and then being able to see and notice the wind and the waves. And when the waves are going in that direction, you ride those waves, right? Like you're on a sailboat. But when they're not, they're blowing against it, you just rest, right? You know that you're going in this direction, but you basically use flow and surrender to actually get to that destination, right? And you're constantly checking in with yourself. You're building up your sensors, your internal navigation, to figure out what gives you energy, what takes away your energy, what your intuition is, and you're following your internal sensors versus basically following an external validation thing. Because like, you think if you're following this external validation thing and you're not, your sensors are all turned off, you're gonna think that getting that salary or getting that job or building that business or selling your company is gonna make you feel the way that you want to feel. But then you get it, and maybe it makes you happy for a little bit of time, and then you realize, oh, I still feel the same thing. That thing that I thought, that external thing that I thought was going to make me feel something different, makes me feel the same thing. Like I'm still feeling it, right? So then that wasn't it. It's this other thing that I'm gonna get. If I get that other thing, then I'll feel different, right? And then I get the other thing, then it feels the same. And so why is that? It's because we think that something that's external is gonna make us feel something internal, but it's an internal problem. And so the work starts with internal, right? And so it's like, how do you actually feel what you want to feel today, right? How do you feel? How do you feel like whatever is enough, right? Enough is usually the how do I feel enough today? Because if you can't feel enough today, then you're never going to feel enough, no matter how much money you have or how much success you have, right? So how do you feel enough? And then once you feel enough, how do I actually like figure out who I am and what I'm supposed to do in this world, what my purpose is, and because like we all have flow, right? You do something and you feel that flow. You can have that all the time, right? You just have to figure out how to move in the world to continuously have flow where things are easy. And that's kind of like what I learned. And so because I got from by me to through me, I realized, oh, like there's a real value in this, and I can help people that are in by me to through me. And I can specifically help Asian American men from by me to through me, because Asian American men are especially in this by me mode, right? Because we're all robots.
We have tiger parents.
We basically, we're all robots, because for thousands of years in China, there's this imperialist system where if you get a good grade on this test compared to other people, you get money and power. Right. And that culture is our culture, this achievement culture. And so it doesn't matter who you are or what you like or what gives you energy. That all is trained out of you. It just matters how well you do on this test compared to other kids. And that's your value in this world. And that's and then your parents' value is how well your kids do well on this test, right? And it doesn't have to be a test. It could be music, or it could be sports. It could be SATs. It could be college. It could be jobs. It could be money. But we're just all on this like achievement-oriented culture where all of our individuality is ripped out. So there's a point in time where you like something and you enjoy something, but that didn't matter because you got to go study for a test. And so we all shut down our ability to actually know who we are. So by our 30s, mid 30s, we are miserable because we've lost ourselves, right? We don't even know what it feels like to be ourselves because it's been trained out of us. And we thought that the thing that our parents told us that we're to get is going to basically make us feel like ourselves, but that's not it. And maybe in our 20s, we were like hopeful. By our 30s, we know that's not true. But we don't know what is going to make us feel that way, because no one's ever taught us that. We just think that it's going to be more of the thing that we were doing, right? And so I specifically can help Asian American men with this problem.
Got it. No, that's very, very true. And thank you for being so detailed, explaining why Asian American men, right? I mean, as Asian American myself, I know what you mean. I can relate to that. And no, your whole journey is incredible, right? The audience here really appreciate your candidness, how you really share all your ups and downs, and you actually left nothing in the tank. You've shared it all with the audience. So, I mean, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Will. I think there are definitely would like to invite you back in another episode to talk about this whole coaching journey. I know you're really into that now and being an organizer. There's so many different aspects about you that people would like to learn about. But yeah, thank you all for tuning into this episode for Institute for Greatness. And I hope you learn a lot about Will Chang. And just one last thing, Will. So how can people find you? What's the website for your company or LinkedIn?
Yeah. So I'd say that LinkedIn is probably the best way. I've been posting a lot of my thoughts on LinkedIn. So just find me on Will Chang. I also have a podcast, wild.show. So WLD.show. I don't have a coaching website yet. I'm just really doing it kind of like, but yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Will. Appreciate your time. And we look forward to host another episode in the future. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.